Hey guys, my name is Nick and welcome to this battle report, and I'm sporting some lovely, wonderful new merch from IDIC Beer. So this weekend, just gone, so that would have been the 28th of July, I headed down to Nick's place and we had a couple of games. In fact, we had 3 games. The first of those was my campaign list, which is going to be a Tzeentch Demon kind of list, although that may change, versus his Necrons. And my demons are not particularly shooty, so you're going to head on over to Nick's channel and that battle report is going to feature over there. And I'll put a link in the description below and a little card up in the corner so you can go and check that out. A very good game, very interesting. Look forward to seeing your opinions on how that battle panned out. Now, our second game of the day is the one featuring on this channel. So this is the Imperial Knights versus Nick's tournament list. So he's got an Assault Necron list that he's facing and taking to an upcoming tournament, and he wanted to try out his list versus Knights. Now he doesn't get to play Knights very often, if at all, so has never played anything of this kind of nature. So very few models, lots of toughness, lots of wounds. So I volunteered to take these guys down and give him a run for his money, and we're going to spin into this battle report very shortly and see how we do. So this is my Imperial Knight force. It's the Legio Astorum, but for purposes of household, they are Household Raven. And you can see actually I've adopted some Household Raven iconography on these 2 armigers. So the list is 2 detachments, 2 super heavy detachments. The first one here on the left is a Paladin and an Errant, and then the new armiger Helverin. The second one on the right then, it contains my Warlord, which is this Warden here with his Gatling cannon. And then he's also accompanied by another Errant as well. These also have an Armiger Warglaive with them as well. And this comes in at 1,992 points and generates 6 command points. Okay, so this is IDIC Beer's Necron assault list as part of his upcoming tournament. Do you want to talk us through the list?
Yeah, sure. So I've gone for a single Outrider detachment. Part and parcel of the list development is the restrictions in multiple dynasties because of the paint scheme at the tournament, and because of those restrictions I've decided to go for something quite fun, and that is a full-on assault list. So heading up the detachment, we've got a Destroyer Lord with a War Scythe, and he's got Nano Scarab Casket and Crimson Haze. We've then got the elite slot. I've got 9 flayed ones. I've made a recent change from going from 2 squads of flayed ones to introducing the Deceiver, so we now have the Deceiver in the list. Fast attack, I have 3 squads of 6 Wraiths. I've got a 1 random whip coil just to make the points up, and then 3 maxed out squads of Scarab Swarms, 9 in each. And then finally we've got a heavy supports choice of 2 Tomb Spiders with the Gloom Prism. That takes me up to 1,999 points and gives me 4 command points.
So we've now deployed, ready for the mission. What mission have we got?
Scorched Earth.
Scorched Earth.
Dawn of War.
And Dawn of War. Now this is specific to the tournament that Nick's going to be in. So it is out of their campaign pack. So from the Knights perspective, we have a Paladin and an Armiger over on this flank. We have the Helverin in the middle here. Then we have 2 Errants and then the Warden over here. So being a Knight army, obviously it did drop pretty quick, only 6 deployments, so I will be getting +1 to going first. Over on the Necron side then, we have a Deceiver up here who's going to do some trickery in a minute, no doubt. We have a large Scarab farm going on over here with some spiders backed up by some of these fearful Wraiths, which, if you watch any of Nick's battle reports, are to be feared at all times. And then we move down here, we have a Destroyer Lord, and then we have some more Wraiths, and then a mini Scarab farm over in the corner, but just without the spiders over here. So from his perspective, he is facing those Knights there, and those Knights over there. Let's get the game on. So before the first turn, the Deceiver has cast some of his trickery and is able to redeploy himself and 2 other units, and he's brought with himself one of the units of Wraiths that were over in this corner next to the Scarab farm, and then he's brought another unit over straight onto this objective right over here. And because this is the units have deployed already, they don't fall foul to the chapter approved, can't be deployed outside of your deployment zone shenanigans. So straight onto the objective. There is a remit on this though, or a downside. These guys cannot charge in their first turn, but it does mean some interesting change of play, as over in this back corner now there is not a lot going on for these guys to engage. Fortunately they have a bit of range, so we should be good. But the Deceiver, as expected, has done some shenanigans. So the important roll then, first turn, what are we going to go for here? Are we ready, Nick?
I am ready. Here we go.
A 1 versus 6. So the Imperial Knights do go first. Are you going to attempt to steal?
Am I going to steal? Why not? I've got my glasses on. That's not...
We've seen you with your glasses on before in your Q&As.
Yeah, I'm old, that's it.
I'm old, I wear glasses.
No.
And it's a 2, so the Imperial Knights have the option to open fire and see how these Necrons survive to some actual shooting this time, compared to the earlier game where I had not a lot. So the end of the Imperial Knight turn 1, the Paladin ran around this little corner here, opened fire with his battle cannon and took aim at 2 spiders that were just left as a smoking pile of living, non-living metal. The Armigers down here that also opened a fire, this one here and this one here, both taking aim at quite long distance because their weapons are super long, over at these wraiths over here that were cowering in this terrain. And combined weight of fire, eventually 3 of them fell at this stage, but we haven't got to reanimation or anything yet. They do reanimate?
Only with a stratagem.
Only with a stratagem, so we're all good. Over here then, the first errant, he also took aim down this way and contributed to those wraiths struggling a little bit down there. A few stubbers all fired into these guys over here, killing 2.5 bases. And then over here we went straight for some shooting. So the Avenger cannon over here, which is the relic version, also opened fire and contributed to some more death over here, before they both ran into combat, never fearful, and straight in and took down 2 in combat. So 2 in combat and 1 from some shooting, using Titanic feet rather than all the fancy melee weapons, because 12 attacks and these guys with a 3-up invulnerable save, the volume of attacks would actually be more beneficial. Over here they stayed where they were. Everyone else is ready to go as we move into Necrons turn 1. So the end of Necrons turn 1. Not a lot of activity over here as expected. The Scarabs sat over here on this objective, making sure they claim that point. All the action though was taking place in the middle. So we had a quick reanimation using some command points here to reanimate 1 extra Wraith from the damage earlier, and the Wraiths and the Scarabs all piled in to the melee that was going on in the middle. Now the Catan couldn't charge because of the shifting of the ways when he moved and redeployed at the start of the game, so he had to stand there and watch as the Destroyer Lord, 2 squads of Wraiths and these Scarabs all piled in. And the net result, this Titan here has lost 10 wounds, and this Knight Titan over here has lost just a couple of wounds. And in the return combat, there's a couple of Wraiths have gone down. You can see that unit there that's just down to 2, and one of them is on a couple of wounds, and 1 Wraith over here has died. That pink dice there is representing the whip coils. No further attacks were done on these. These things are nasty against Knights, I've just discovered. So the Catan could have used a couple of powers though. Unfortunately, this is his tournament list, and these 2 powers, the Seismic Assault and Sky of Falling Stars, don't really have any impact on a Knight list. It's all about taking out hordes. But equally, my Knights have got invulnerable saves against ranged attacks, and this assaulting list here doesn't do any of that. So almost in comparison really, he's got some powers that I can not worry about, and equally these invulnerable saves do no good in melee, so pretty evens on that front. So we now move in to Knights turn 2. So the end of the Imperial Knights turn 2. This armour just sat here on the objective and opened fire over to here, and the Wraiths managed to pass all of their invulnerable saves. This guy here with his battle cannon also fired into some wraiths that were down here and did manage to shred a couple, taking them down to just a single guy. This armiger here piled into combat and successfully killed a couple more, but did take a wound in damage on the return combat. This errant here also fired. We're continuing to fire. There's a bit of a theme here, continuing to fire at this unit of race that were occupying the middle forces here. These guys over here did fall back out of combat, but because they are Titanic Knights, they're allowed to fall back, shoot and charge. And that's exactly what they did. So this errant fell back here, he put in some shots. I think the shots weren't that effective, but he then did charge the single wraith that was down there and stomped him into the floor. Well, this guy here, the warlord himself, he opened fire with his Gatling cannon all over the place. Icarus cannons going off into the scarabs, and then finally charged them. And in that resulting charging phase, yeah, lots of scarabs were destroyed. I think we're down to just 3 bases in there now that are just sort of about there. He did take a wound in return though. Scarabs always wound anything regardless of toughness on a 5, so shredding some of their numbers is pretty good. And these guys are still over here ready for their next turn. I'm sure we're going to see some action in the Necrons turn 2. So without further ado, we shall go into Necron turn 2. So the end of Necron turn 2. So over here we can see that these scarabs fell back out of combat so they can ensure they can be uncontested on that objective. Nothing else happened over this side of the board. However, all the action continued in the middle. So over here then, the Deceiver charged, the Warlord, the Destroyer Lord charged. This big bunch of scarabs that were over there charged over here, whereas the scarabs that were in combat then fell back to take this objective, having been severely depleted. So a full strength unit of 9 piled in. On that way in though, this Deceiver, you can see that magic dice of 2. He took a thermal cannon to the face in Overwatch, taking 6 wounds off of him. And in the resultant combat, I did an interrupt over here with this guy. He then killed one of the wraiths that have come around the back there. And then once this guy had been hit for a good 10 wounds, he's gotten 4 wounds left after all the combat. The Deceiver causing most of that with a flat 3 damage that got through. But in my turn to attack back, the Destroyer Lord that was there is just now a pile of mercury on the floor, and he failed his ability to get back up on some wounds. And the Necrons are entirely out of command points and no rerolls available. That was the end of Necron's turn 2, and we move in to the Imperial Knight turn 3. So the end of Knight's turn 3, my trusty little armiger sitting down here, keeping hold of that objective nice and safe. Did whiff most of his shots though, and not a lot happened with him. In the meantime, this guy here did finish up these remaining scarabs and claims that objective in the name of House Raven / Legio Astorum. This guy here, he moved over to this objective here and pummeled some shots in to the combat that's now been fallen back from the other 2 knights. Did a little bit of damage there. I think he killed 1 wraith from his battle cannon. Down here, this fella here made his way carefully underneath the little bridge into this unit of flayed ones which had come in from the deep strike, and yeah, he stomped those, as well as firing his melter gun in this general direction. And you can see there's a lot of stuff missing over here that was there in the previous turn. So concentration of fire from him and him and him, and then some ensuing combat. The Catan has gone, most of the scarabs have gone.
Who didn't kill me.
And then in the resultant explosion of the Catan, who then just sort of created like a wormhole effect or a giant explosion in the middle of the board, causes D6 mortal wounds to all units around him. D3. Is it D3? Yeah. D3 mortal wounds around him. Inflicted only 1 on me, even though he is down to only sort of a wound left. Did kill the last wraith and a scarab base. So these wraiths, which are quite tough with their 3-up invulnerable, was helped along and sent into into space, time and space, interdimensional, wherever that Catan has sent them. Then over here, this guy then piled into the combat. There is one lonely wraith who is quite crippled in there, contesting that objective, and I think the writing is on the wall for this particular battle.
Never.
But we will never surrender, say the Necrons. It's all part of a tactical plan somewhere along the lines. But this knight here, yeah, he is seriously crippled. Fortunately, I did pull out, there is a stratagem where you can still use the top line of their stat line, so I have used that card. I believe I'm down to just one command point in my army. But
so my mission now is to try and not get tabled. Because I'm going to carry on, because obviously we're playing as if it was a tournament play. So I'm going to try and not get tabled. That's my mission.
There we go. We're going to move in to the next Necron turn 3. At the end of Necron's turn 3, with only one Wraith, a handful of flayed ones and a couple of Scarabs, this was an exceptionally quick turn. These guys have fallen back to try and get a bit of cover and angle for this objective. These Scarabs advanced and tried to hide up in here, and this Wraith fell back and is also up on a ledge as well. So trying to avoid maybe a bit of combat going on there. But we move into Knight's turn 4. So the end of the Imperial Knights turn 4, and the Necrons have been banished. There was a couple of reanimation protocols. There were a couple of flayed ones that did get back up. They were shot, and surprisingly all their cover saves pretty much made it. And then he walked into combat and did stompy stompy, and that was pretty much it. Left one flayed one alive, and then the dreaded morale phase, and he vanished. Over here, the remaining Wraith suffered from a rather punishing Gatling cannon.
And Scarabs died too. Nasty man.
Oh, there's a couple of Scarabs that were down here. Yeah, they are no longer there. Let's put it that way.
Basically, there's no Necrons left.
The Necrons have decided that, you know, they don't need this bit of the world anymore. This is this can be handed to the Knights, and they'll be back another time, I am sure. So with Linebreaker then secured and all 6 objectives, we did tally up how many wounds the Knights have taken though, and it was 30 wounds across. That guy there, he'd taken a wound. This guy here had taken 21 wounds. My Warlord over here had taken 7, and this guy had taken a wound as well. So 30 wounds across the board. Would have been enough to chin an entire knight and some damage on another if it was focused, but maybe the Necrons will awake next time for some revenge. So there we go then, guys. The Necrons failed to beat the Knights. Now, there's a couple of good reasons for that. The Knights put out a punishing amount of firepower, and the Necrons in this particular tournament list are not particularly shooty, so they're going to have to get into combat, and then the Knights just shoot them, fall back, shoot them, fall back, and so on. So a very difficult, very uphill challenge for Mr. IDIC Beer to try and face this list, to be honest. But it was a good test to see what happens. Those Scarabs could do some could do some damage against Knights if they were en masse, because they do wound pretty easily. And the Dynasty rules for this particular army, there's lots of re-rolls and lots of bonus attacks or extra attacks on 6s to hit, so it can generate a bucket of attacks when it comes to melee. And against these Knights, got a good chance. They've just got to get into that combat without being shot, and that's no mean feat against this list. And this isn't any kind of special Knight list. There's no Dominus classes in there. There's no super cheese from what I can tell. I mean, I think there are more powerful households. I was just running Raven because it's easy. It just means that I get to move and advance and still shoot. And when you've only got 6 models, trying to get to objectives, that extra distance is what I was aiming for. So that's the reason I run Raven with such few models and just give it a go. This was my first game in 8th edition with Knights. I do like them. I'm a big fan of Knights, for those of you that watch this channel. Knights, Titans in general. So it's good to finally get a good game in with these guys and actually face IDIC Beer, the battle of the YouTube channels. Go and check him out if you haven't seen his channel before. Please go and drop him a subscription. It'll be much appreciated. He's on about 12 or so thousand, so he's well up there compared to my little baby channel over here. But thank you very much for hosting and for the sausage rolls and for the pizza and everything else. It was really, really good to finally meet you, and I'm looking forward to a rematch, I am sure, in the not too distant future. But if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I shall catch you on the next video.